I was growing over 100 trays of microgreens in a 10-foot by 10-foot spare bedroom in my house every week. The key was maximizing how we set up our grow racks so that we could grow as many microgreens as possible in such a small space. We've since moved to a larger space, but we still set up our racks so that we can maximize the amount of microgreens we can grow here. So let's go inside and take a look. So here we are inside the farm, and we're about to take a look at how I set up my grow racks. But before we get started, just remember that it's really only three components. We have the shelving unit or the grow rack, and then we have the grow lights, and then we have an automatic timer that kind of ties it all together. But we're going to look at how we optimize each of those three components to grow more microgreens in the same amount of space. So the first thing you need is the grow rack, which is just a shelving unit. We buy NSF racks, which means they're food safe, stainless steel. The standard rack that most people buy is a 6-tier, which gives you actually 6 shelves. But because we don't put lights under and grow on the floor, it actually only gives you 5 levels to grow on. So with 4 trays per level and 5 levels, that's a max of 20 trays under lights at any given time. What you can do when you're starting out is if you're trying to limit how much you're investing to test out microgreens, you can actually buy one of the 6-tier racks and only use 4 of the levels. So 1, 2, 3, 4 to grow microgreens on. And you can do that by buying an 8-pack of lights and then just reserving the bottom shelf with no lights for germination, because you can stack 4 to 6 trays per stack times 4 gives you 20 to 24 that you can stack in place, which is more than enough if you only have space for 16 trays at a time. Now, what we've done here is we've actually Frankensteined a few different shelving units and stolen a shelf from another one so that we could have 7 tiers or 6 growing levels. So you can see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 down here, which gives us 24 trays under lights per rack at any given time, which again is about a 20% increase in growing in the exact same footprint that we had before. So the second component to setting up this rack system for growing microgreens is the grow lights. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions on what you need, but these are just basic T5 Barina lights on Amazon. I think an 8-pack costs like $80 and 12-pack, which you would need for 6 grow it levels, is about $100. So they're super cheap and they do a good enough job for us for what we're growing on short 10-day microgreen cycles that I've had no issue in yield and production using these lights. And just the fact that they're super simple, super cheap, and readily available makes them an easy choice for me. So for each growing level, we have 2 lights, so 1 and 2. And again, I just zip tie them on there, and then you can actually link a bunch of the lights together. I'll get into that a little bit more later. But the key here with choosing the Barina lights for me was the amount of power that they draw. Previously, I used to use the Sunblaster Nano reflector. Those lights would draw 0.5 amp per light. So at 2 lights per shelf, that was 1 amp per level. Now, a quick disclaimer here, I am not an electrician. Please check with an electrician. Do not burn your house down. This is what I have done. But most US electrical circuits are 15 amp, and then they will start to trip at about 80% capacity, which gives you 12 amps of power. So if each level is using 1 amp, and I have 6 levels, that's 6 amps per shelving unit. So if I have 2 racks set up at 6 levels each, that is 12 amps. That gives me 48 trays under lights at any given time. Now, if I switch to these Barina lights, these use a 1/4 amp per light. So for each level, we have 0.5 amp. Times 6, that's 3 amps per rack. So that allows me to get 4 of these total for 96 trays under lights at any given time. And this is exactly what I did before I moved into this larger space. I had a 10 by 10, about 100 square foot spare office bedroom in our house. And I had 2 racks like this behind me. And then perpendicular, kind of making a U shape, I had 2 more racks. And we were doing over 100 trays per week in that small bedroom. And again, I say 100 plus because we have stuff we grow in blackout that don't require lights. So if you want to maximize space in your home, if you have a spare bedroom available, you can make decisions to optimize that space. And as you can see, I was able to get twice as much production by changing the lights I was using and choosing cheaper lights that didn't draw as much power. So most grow lights have the ability to be daisy chained together. So what that means is that you have one light, you have a cord, and then you have another light. So they run together, and you can link multiple lights in a circuit, but it only has one plug switch that drives that whole circuit. Over here, you probably can't see, I'll zoom in a second, but we have the circuit breaker or the power strip that goes up to a single cord with a switch. It runs across, it goes around the backside, and then it comes across, back around, and then it comes over here, and then back to where it terminates over here. So as you can see, I have 2, 4, 6, 8. I have 8 lights per cord that goes into the power strip. And then each level has its own essentially circuit that it runs on. So I can have the entire top level turn off if I turn it off like that. I also have some automation that I could use Alexa to turn it on and off by level as well. But the point is just to keep all the lines clean. You don't want to daisy chain too many together. Again, don't ask me how I know. The cords will melt and the circuit will trip. So then the final component of each rack system is the automatic timer that we use to control our lights. So as I showed you previously, the power strip over here, this one is a Casa smart plug. So it's actually can be controlled by Alexa. Alexa, turn on the farm. This particular one has 6 controlled outlets. You can find some cheap mechanical ones on Amazon, but I find most of those only have 4 timed plugs, and then they have 4 always on plugs. So I like this one because it has 6. I like it that I can use my app in Alexa to control it. But again, each level runs into a cord that runs into the system. As far as light schedule, we grow ours on a 18 hours on, 6 hours off. So our lights will turn off at 9 p.m. and they will come back on again automatically at 3 a.m. I find that a smart strip like this is the simplest automation that any grower should take advantage of. So real quick, just a little bit of real talk. So you can grow a lot of microgreens in a small space, but your capacity to grow microgreens is not usually why people fail at microgreens. It's usually because they have a lack of customers or they struggle to find customers that are of high enough value to make the business viable. I built my business selling microgreens directly to chefs, getting them to commit to a weekly recurring order, which allows me to plan production and plan my revenue. But the real importance of it is the fact that they have a high lifetime value. The average chef in my market is ordering about $3,500 of microgreens per year, but most of the accounts I have worked with for multiple years and see no end in sight. So the actual lifetime value of a chef client is much higher than that $3,500 per year. Let's compare that to selling microgreens at a farmer's market where somebody might buy $5 or $10 worth of product. Maybe they come back every week. But at most, I can't imagine most of those clients have a lifetime value of more than maybe $200. The way that that business model works is that you have a very large pool of people who you can constantly market to and get new customers. Compare that to chefs where, yes, it might be a little more intimidating or it might require a little more legwork to set up chef appointments and get those clients. But once you have them, They stay with you for a very long time and they're worth a lot of money. Some new growers are nervous to approach chefs, or they've heard certain myths about the attitudes that chefs will have, but most people just don't know how to pitch them. How do you price? How do you package? How do you set a meeting, and what do you say? If any of that sounds like you, but you still feel like you really want to reach out to chefs and start working with them on a weekly recurring order, then you have to check out my video where I break down exactly how I pitch chefs on a weekly recurring order, starting with the core messaging on my website, what I say during the meeting, and then finally what I send right after the chef meeting. So go ahead and check that video out right now.